Martha, thank you so much for joining us today. I wondered whether I could ask you why you got involved with Rise in Strength.
Actually, it was kind of a little like surprising to get involved. I ended up engaging with some of the leaders over a conversation while I was visiting in London, believe it or not. And during that conversation, I started to hear that there was a group of women across the world, women of faith, who are getting together to consider our role in the church. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly the place and the space I want to be involved. And so I ended up engaging with Amanda Jackson first, and then with the steering committee. And as we were praying and working together online, actually, because I live in the United States, we started to recognize that all of us had the guidance to work together and see God at work in such a situation as the Rise situation in the conference in Amsterdam. So we were all very much convinced that this is what God would have me to do for that time. And it was exciting to me because, frankly, as a single woman of faith who has moved around quite a bit around the world, finding a community of women of faith who were global minded was beyond imagination. It was so exciting for me and energizing.
Oh, that's lovely. And then coming back from Amsterdam, how did you use the call to all Christians in your local community?
So when you get with a group of powerful women from all over the world who are very convinced of their faith and also are in all kinds of amazingly challenging and also rewarding situations around the world, you really do come back pretty energized, and also you recognize where the gaps and weaknesses are in your own local community. So I immediately went to my church and the leadership and said, listen, this happened. I think you need to hear about this. And I think as church leaders, we need to be considering what's been said, what this call looks like, and where you are. Because, and this is what I said more than once to them, I don't know, I think they weren't always excited about hearing this repeated, but I kept saying, God's at work and you can either join it or let it go. But if you join it, I think it's going to be more powerful than you could ever expect. And this will include challenging some assumptions that you may have made about women, particularly single women in the church. And it may cause us to all start to reconsider and reframe some of our work here in the local community.
So then, that sounds amazing. And how did they respond? I want to know how they responded.
Yeah. So, so what do you do with a Penn State professor who has worked globally for decades, actually, across a lot of countries, and who was a missionary and a pastor's kid, right, who is now in a secular organization? You can't just say, oh, well, that's just her. So, so that I think the strength and the incredible energy you get from this global movement of people, of women, brings enough power and actually strength to the moment and the message that the leaders had to listen to it. So they gave me a forum to actually present it at a bigger level. And so I presented it. And so we still have this ongoing conversation with some of the leaders and some of the men in immediate circles of the church talking about this. And so it hasn't gone away. I think COVID has suppressed some of this and sidelined some of this, but ultimately I still have the energy and the the impetus to say, listen, this is what God is doing. And we are needing to join his work in this organization, but not only the organization, and this whole understanding of how God works through women in all states of life, in all places of life. And to ignore that or suppress that is actually going to only hurt you as a church. For me, spiritually, in my walk, it has energized me. And I believe it has formed some bonds across geography as well as across different kinds of thinking and frameworks that we have as women of faith. And it's actually empowered all of us to see God. And that's, I think, my message right now is saying it gives us the eyes to see God working in ways that you can't see outside of this type of community.
That's brilliant. Martha, thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your thoughts.